What I'd like to do here is tell briefly a story. There's a paper on this, so don't try and capture all the details here. You can catch up later. The slides can be available, and there's a reference to a paper that gives further information. I want to describe what was done, show some results, some data, and try and understand why this worked. What you will hear today at most conferences are success stories. No one really knows why it works. Most doesn't. So we want to try and dig around with some of that. Okay, I was contacted by an organization, Bwin, to help them demonstrate what they had done. They thought they'd done something good. They'd tried to speak with the Agile community that didn't want to know. These guys had made genuine innovations. They'd broken the rules, and most of us don't like that. Bwin, you probably know, is software company, new software company, multi-user systems in place. It's multi-transactional, requires secure financial implementations, and needs to respond to the market, to its users' needs, to legislative changes as required. 2 sites, London and Vienna, different cultures. Critically, I think, Bwin is a new software organization. The business is software. It delivers services, betting, online gaming, sports. It's entertainment mediated by the software. They have to do that. And I think this matters. If this had been tried in an insurance company or a bank, the result would have been different. Oops. They were agile. They'd put Scrum in place. It was working to an extent, but it wasn't giving them what they wanted. So the beginning, the starting place is an agile organization. But there were delays. Teams were being delayed by other teams that they were dependent upon. Unclear what was going on. Team activity was opaque. Teams were responsible for their own ways of working, and others that depended on their delivery were not getting what they wanted. And of course this cascaded. They decided they needed something new, an agile capability to coordinate delivery, and this was done about 6-7 years ago now, so this was genuinely new. Coordinate delivery of system components by these delivery teams to these weren't doing maintenance, major systems changes as the law changes or they had to move into a new market, and this to be a very dependable capability. So they wanted teams working to a rhythm, delivering exactly what was expected every time, because another team, many teams would be depending on them. Predictability was critical. Increased responsiveness as the business needs changed. They had to respond fast, and a sprint wasn't fast enough. High frequency and regularity would give them this predictability, and of course don't screw up the systems quality. Specifically, predictability has got 2 parts here. It's when, and actually they were fairly relaxed about this, within 7 days. I mean, most agile activity has far more tightly time boxed than that, but what as well. And a lot of agile organizations are disastrous at delivering what they think they ought to be delivering. They had to deliver dependably when they committed. Responsiveness, if the business wanted a change, yes, we can do it now, fast. Frequency and regularity had given them that, and don't screw up the quality. I mean, what do we mean by quality? Well, because they had very rapid feedback and systems were going live all the time, or changes going live very fast, it's judged empirically. You knew when you were screwed up, and you knew when it was good. So they recognize it when they see it, even if they didn't have particular measures, although they were thinking about it. This is roughly what we've got. The green boxes, the stakeholders, and there were lots. Some of them acted as proxies for the others, so they'd submit stories to go into the product backlog. These would be cascaded into a particular sprint, like be delivered, so that at the next sprint, those could be depended upon to have been put in place so that you could work on the next ones, again and again and again. So this is an impressive machine they were putting in place. How do you do this? Distill refine and define a single way of working, shared across all teams. Now this is heresy. Most of the Agile community hated this, maybe you still do. Tough. That's the way they were going to do it. Now it didn't seem obvious to me, but to the people that had been struggling to find out what was going on, being able to talk to other teams and know what they were talking about, or to be able to see what was going on, was critical. And this is the sort of thinking you would find in a defense contractor, an old-fashioned engineering organization, not a new organization. Standard, defined process, not messed around with, tailored. You will use it as it is. Strong emphasis on accurate estimation. So if you estimate you're going to deliver this, you do. Understood by everybody. Making a sprint status, including the problems, visible. And with a set of simple, well understood interactions and interfaces so that both the business and other teams and any other stakeholders can interact, not just interfere with the working. Now this was novel. Actually, it needs courage. If you haven't done this and you're proposing this as a solution to delays, I think there's a lot of either very clear thinking or courage here. How do they do it? Bizarrely, they got it right without experts. They started consensually building up a common way of working. Not easy, I mean, everybody likes their ways of working. If you're told, well, you can't do that, we've got to come up with a common way, there are going to be contention, arguments, and upset, and there was. And I think maybe that's the way it is. I can't see that people are going to be particularly happy doing this. It was difficult, it stalled. Real change is difficult. There is going to be friction, but they got through it. And interestingly, this was an interesting contrast. They were introducing alien concepts into a young, agile environment from an older discipline, in contrast to this paper here, where Agile Scrum was introduced into a defense contractor in Denmark and had spectacular results. So there's an interesting comparison here. It's heretical mix. Because my job was to show that they were good, I wanted to know. I went in, it felt like a good organization, but that's no good. You can't just say, well, they're great guys. I wanted information, I wanted data. And they were slightly puzzled by this. They showed me their screens, their burn downs, and all that. That didn't tell me anything. I needed old data to show that they had changed. And this is quite rare. It took a while for them to understand what I was after, but in the end, I got hold of it. 6 teams started using this new ways of refined way of working that continued to be refined. I had to use the data that they had, not what I actually wanted, but that's actually the way it should be. If someone comes in and asks for other data, it's likely to be distorted. I wanted some other stuff, but it wasn't there, so tough, I'd deal with it. And I just looked at the raw data, little arithmetic, no sophisticated analyses. And I'll go very quickly through this, and I don't know whether it'll be clear here, but if you go to the paper, it might explain itself a little better. So, I looked at schedule predictability. 1 indicates they actually delivered within target, and 0 indicates that they didn't. What you can see is increasing density over, this is about 2 years, 2.5 years, towards the end. Very few are continuing to fall out, so actually they were getting better. Schedule predictability, days deviation. Towards the end, they're all on the bottom there. They're not deviating at all. Although, interestingly, none of them delivering early. If the number of days delay, I had to do some arithmetic. I showed that graphic, and everyone wants a number, so I did some arithmetic. 5, nearly 6-fold increase in schedule predictability. Actually, my initial calculation gave an 8-fold increase, but I thought that was incredible, so I actually changed the calculation slightly to make it slightly more reasonable. Scope predictability. Did they deliver what they said? Not just when, but what. Same sort of thing, high density there, and they were sort of delivering a few screw-ups here, but increasingly the density that they really were delivering early. I tried to look at the number of story points. That told me nothing. So I actually tried to normalize it, did some arithmetic, reluctantly. Still sort of told me they're delivering roughly what they were claiming to. Again, I had to resort to some arithmetic here. A 12 to 1 improvement. They really were delivering what they said they were delivering. This was critical. Responsiveness. If the business wants something, Bwin has got to deliver a new product, a new service, a new game, something. It has to be put in place. And it declined over this period, which really worried me because this was one of their prime, their prime driver. And I went back and said, look, it's gone wrong. And they said, don't worry about it. Because we now trust the way we work, now we understand we are using it officially. We don't need the degree of interrupt-driven development that we previously did. Had they screwed up the quality, all I had was defects. I had a look at defects going into production, and it seemed pretty stable. Towards the end there, they were transitioning to another defect tracker, so that's not the point. The blue bars are actually defects found during development, and that odd pattern they couldn't understand at all. But quality seemed good. I'm going to skip the next couple of slides. Looking at the data, it wasn't just they'd sustained quality, it actually looked pretty good as well. I'm not quite sure why it felt like that, but I tried to compare it with industry standard, which is not really very sensible, but I had a go. And by looking at the defect densities, what was the defect density, it seemed to come out pretty damn good as well. I'll leave you to read that at your leisure, but they are as good as they think they are. And I was astonished by this transformation that had taken place by unusual means. Side effects. They didn't need as many Scrum Masters. Essentially, teams were so easy to run that they could share a Scrum Master between 3 delivery teams. Teams added and subtracted as required to major systems. Basically, you can plug in teams as and required. You can scale major developments very, very fast because everybody knows how it works. The interfaces are there. It's like Lego. New teams created in weeks. It used to take months. And to the newbies who hadn't seen the pain that they had gone through, this sort of seemed obvious. I mean, it absolutely wasn't, but it seemed it. Now, what has happened since is the people that made this happen have moved on. The organizational memory of the grief they went through and the rationale is moving to other corporations. And there is, as usual, no memory of why we work this way. What you will hear is, we're going to change, we're going to be more agile, we're going to be better, more productive. Why do you do it the way you do? And this organization is losing that. So why did it work? Most process development work is like wading through a swamp. It's hard work, perhaps necessarily. Alternatively, it's all going swimmingly and then comes to a crashing halt. I believe the context that this young, dynamic, software-centric organization made it easier. There was no obvious hierarchy. It was all us. You know, we've got to do this, not being instructed by senior managers. There were senior managers, but they were part of the team. The change made sense. I mean, clearly it made commercial sense, and it made sense technically as well. It wasn't, let's do this good stuff. It seemed to fit. And they quantified. I mean, normally, the performance targets are a disaster. Technical staff own and drive the transformation. It wasn't inflicted by gurus, by experts in Scrum or process. I mean, they used them and upset them and annoyed them, but tough. They were meeting their own objectives, and they dealt with the problems. They didn't bury their heads, and they were dogma-free. They took what they wanted from Agile, they took what they wanted from other areas, and maybe it was luck. This is described in that paper there. That's a link, by the way, and it's interesting to compare it with that Magic Potion for Code Warriors by Jeff Sutherland. It's sort of complementary. And that's it. Thank you very much.